First contact folly. The research vessel Taxonomica hung in low Earth orbit like an iridescent soap bubble, its quantum camouflage reflecting the planet's blues and greens in ever-shifting patterns. Inside, lead researcher Dr. Vix adjusted their sensory appendages with growing irritation as they reviewed the preliminary scan data for the 5th time. Another Class 3 biosphere. They chittered to their assistant, Wren, who floated nearby on anti-gravity pads. The Galactic Science Council won't be pleased. We were promised something extraordinary on this expedition. Wren's crystalline exoskeleton shifted colors in a pattern indicating curiosity. But Dr. Vix, the diversity readings are off the charts, especially among the reptilian species. Diversity without sophistication is meaningless. Vix dismissed, their primary eyes narrowing while their secondary set scanned the live feeds. Look at these creatures. Cold-blooded, primitive, surviving on pure instinct. They're barely worth categorizing. The Taxonomica's AI, which the crew had nicknamed SAS, due to its surprisingly developed personality matrix, chose that moment to interject. Doctor, my analysis suggests several of these species display remarkable. SAS, please limit your input to raw data processing. Vix interrupted. I studied primitive worlds for 3 centuries. These reptiles are nothing more than living fossils, evolutionary dead ends that somehow survived. The ship's external sensors picked up a massive heat signature from the Indonesian archipelago. Wren's excitement was palpable. Doctor, look at these readings. The largest congregation of monitor lizards in the Pacific region. Vix's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among their species. Perfect. We'll start there. Prepare the containment fields and collection drones. Class D equipment will be more than sufficient. Class D, SAS questioned. My calculations suggest. Class D, Vex repeated firmly. These are primitive creatures. Their responses will be basic, their movements predictable. Will be done before the local star sets. As the Taxonomica began its descent through the atmosphere, SAS made one final attempt. Doctor, I feel compelled to point out that the historical database shows several previous expeditions to Earth have ended in unexpected ways. Those researchers were incompetent, Vix declared. This is simple science. We observe, we catalog, we collect specimens. Nothing more. The ship touched down in a clearing near Komodo National Park, its landing struts sinking slightly into the humid earth. The air was thick with the scent of tropical vegetation and salt water. Vix's team deployed their collection equipment with practiced efficiency, setting up containment fields in a standard pentagon pattern. Environmental analysis complete, SAS announced. Local temperature, 35 degrees Celsius. Humidity, 89%. Multiple large life forms detected within 100 meters. Excellent conditions, Vix noted, their confidence growing. The heat will make them sluggish. Wren, activate the thermal lures. These primitive beings will be drawn to the warmth like planets to a star. As the team finished their preparations, none of them noticed the yellow eyes watching from the underbrush. None of them saw the massive shapes moving with surprising stealth through the vegetation. And none of them recognized that their fundamental assumptions about Earth's reptiles were about to be dramatically challenged. The first sign that something was wrong came when their perimeter sensors began registering movement patterns that violated every prediction in their database. These weren't the slow, plodding movements their simulations had shown. These were calculated, purposeful, coordinated. Doctor, Wren's voice had taken on a distinctly worried tone. I'm detecting multiple approaches. The movement speeds, they can't be right. Before Vix could respond, a sound like thunder rolled through the clearing. The sound of massive bodies moving at full sprint. The bushes exploded with movement as 3 fully grown Komodo dragons burst into view, moving with a speed and grace that seemed to defy everything the aliens thought they knew about reptilian capabilities. Impossible, Vix exclaimed, their exoskeleton flashing warning colors. They're cold-blooded. They can't. Correction, SAS interjected, now sounding decidedly smug. They are ectothermic, not inactive. And I believe you're about to learn the difference. As the dragons closed in, moving at speeds approaching 20 kilometers per hour, Vix suddenly realized that perhaps they should have listened to their eyes' warnings. Perhaps they should have reviewed the complete data. Perhaps they should have considered that 300 years of studying primitive worlds didn't prepare one for the surprises Earth had to offer. But such realizations, while valuable, tend to come at inconvenient moments, like when one is about to learn firsthand why Komodo dragons have remained apex predators for millions of years. Pride and predation. The thing about scientific arrogance is that it tends to evaporate quickly when faced with several hundred pounds of charging reptilian predator. Dr. Vix was experiencing this phenomenon firsthand as their carefully constructed worldview crumbled in real time. Activate maximum containment. They shrieked, their voice reaching frequencies previously unknown to xenobiology. Full power to the barrier fields. Ren, displaying surprisingly quick thinking for a junior researcher, had already initiated emergency protocols. The ship's defensive fields hummed to life, creating shimmering walls of energy between the alien scientists and the approaching dragons. Under normal circumstances, these fields could contain creatures 10 times their size. These were not normal circumstances. Fascinating, Sass commented, as the first dragon smashed through the containment field like it was tissue paper. It appears they can detect the electromagnetic frequencies of our barriers. They're actually targeting the weak points in the field matrix. Less analysis, more help. Vix demanded, their entire exoskeleton now flashing emergency patterns. The dragon that had breached their defenses was moving with terrifying precision, its muscular tail sweeping in a precise arc that sent their equipment flying. Would now be an appropriate time to mention that my database indicates Komodo dragons possess intelligence comparable to many of Earth's mammalian predators, Sass inquired. They're capable of complex problem-solving, tool recognition, and not now. Both Vix and Ren shouted in unison as they scrambled backward. The other two dragons had flanked them, moving in a coordinated pattern that was definitely not supposed to be possible for primitive reptiles. Observe how they're using the terrain to their advantage. Sass continued, its tone becoming increasingly educational. Note the efficient energy usage in their movement patterns, really quite remarkable for supposedly simple creatures. One of the dragons demonstrated this efficiency by launching itself onto a fallen log, using the elevation to close the distance to the retreating aliens. Its powerful legs coiled and released like springs, sending it through the air in a leap that defied every prediction in their research databases. Modified Containment Protocol Gamma 7. Vix ordered, their professional dignity now completely abandoned. Ren, deploy the sonic deterrents. Ren activated their last line of defense, a series of devices designed to emit frequencies that should have been unbearable to any reptilian nervous system. The dragons paused for a moment, tilting their heads as if considering this new development. Then, in what Sass would later describe as a magnificent display of adaptive behavior, they simply adjusted their attack pattern to target the sonic emitters first. I feel compelled to update our classification databases, Sass announced as another piece of supposedly predator-proof equipment was reduced to components. Current categorization. Primitive reptiles seems inadequate. The dragons were herding them now, using coordinated movements that spoke of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Each time the aliens tried to create distance, they found their path cut off by another member of the hunting group. The ship. Ren called out, their crystalline form vibrating with stress. We need to reach the ship. But the Taxonomica might as well have been in orbit for all the good it did them. The dragons had maneuvered them away from their escape route with what was beginning to seem like deliberate intent. Doctor, Sass interjected, I've completed my analysis of their hunting patterns. Would you like to know the success rate of their pack hunting strategy? Not particularly. Vix responded, watching in horror as their last backup containment field generator was casually knocked aside by a sweep of a muscular tail. It's quite impressive, actually. When hunting in groups, they have a success rate of. Sass, unless your next words are about how to escape this situation. I don't want to hear it. The AI's response was cut off by a sound that would haunt Vix's dreams for cycles to come. The deep, resonant hiss of a Komodo dragon that had just cornered its prey. The sound carried millions of years of evolutionary confidence, a sound that said, "We were here before the mammals rose to dominance, and we'll be here long after." Perhaps, Sass suggested, with what could only be described as artificial smugness, this would be a good time to revisit our classification criteria for primitive species. The dragons moved closer, their movements unhurried now. They had no reason to rush. After all, they had all day, and their quarry wasn't going anywhere. The heat of humility. In the annals of galactic research disasters, what happened next would eventually be classified under hubris, consequences of. Dr. Vix and Wren found themselves backed against a massive tropical tree, their advanced technology scattered in pieces around the clearing, facing three apex predators who were demonstrating exactly why Earth's reptiles had survived multiple extinction events. Sass, Vix whispered, trying to maintain what little dignity remained while slowly edging around the tree trunk. Initiate Emergency Protocol Alpha 9. I assume you're referring to the emergency protocol that relies on our ground-based equipment. Sass replied. The equipment currently being used as chew toys by our new reptilian acquaintances. A loud crunch punctuated this observation as one of the dragons experimentally bit down on what had been a quantum-stabilized containment generator. The device, rated to withstand the pressure at the bottom of gas-giant atmospheres, crumpled like paper. Might I suggest, Sass continued, that this would be an excellent opportunity to expand our database on Earth reptilian behavior. For instance, did you know that Komodo dragons can smell potential prey from several kilometers away? Their olfactory capabilities are really quite not helping. Wren interrupted, their crystalline form vibrating at a frequency that suggested imminent structural failure. Doctor, the trees. They can't possibly. The dragon nearest to them chose that moment to demonstrate yet another overlooked capability, launching itself partway up the trunk with surprising agility. Its claws left deep gouges in the bark as it used its powerful limbs to pursue them vertically. Updating biological profile, Sass announced cheerfully. Adding proficient climbing abilities to species characteristics, also noting remarkable problem-solving skills and unexpected vertical mobility. Why didn't any of this appear in our preliminary scans? Vix demanded, activating their emergency anti-gravity boosters to reach a higher branch. Oh, it did, Sass replied, along with numerous other capabilities you dismissed as, and I quote, clearly erroneous data. Would you like me to list them now? The third dragon had circled around to the other side of the tree, effectively cutting off their possible escape routes. The hunting strategy displayed a level of tactical coordination that was rapidly dismantling every assumption in Vix's considerable scientific career. Observation. Sass noted, they appear to be employing advanced pack hunting techniques. Similar behaviors have been documented in Earth's mammalian predators, suggesting a level of social intelligence previously underestimated in reptilian species. Less scientific commentary, more survival solutions. Vix snapped, watching in horror as one of the dragons began to work its way around the trunk in a spiral pattern, methodically closing the distance to their perch. Well, Sass mused, we could try using the emergency beacon to call for immediate evacuation. Though that would mean admitting to the Galactic Science Council that you were outmaneuvered by what you termed primitive cold-blooded rocks with legs. A deep, resonant hiss from below reminded them that the dragons were perfectly happy to wait. These were creatures that could go months between meals if necessary. Patience was hardwired into their very being. Perhaps, Wren suggested, their voice quavering, we should reconsider our classification parameters for Earth species, specifically the definition of primitive. An excellent suggestion, Sass agreed. I'm also noting several other research protocols that might benefit from revision. For example, our standard approach to field studies, equipment ratings, and of course, the apparent necessity of actually reading complete species analysis before dismissing them. The dragons below had settled into a siege pattern, their yellow eyes fixed on the aliens above with unwavering focus. Occasionally, one would test the tree's strength with a powerful impact from its tail or attempt another climbing maneuver, keeping their quarry constantly on edge. "Doctor," Wren whispered, after a particularly vigorous shake of their branch. "I believe I now understand why the previous Earth expedition's data was marked with so many warning labels." Indeed, Vikes agreed, their professional arrogance thoroughly replaced by survival instinct. "Sass, hypothetically speaking, what are our chances of reaching the ship if we make a coordinated dash?" Based on their demonstrated speed, intelligence, and current tactical positioning, Sass calculated, "I would rate our chances somewhere between astronomically unlikely and mathematically impossible. Would you like me to show my work?" Evolution's verdict. As the tropical sun climbed higher in the sky, the situation in the clearing had evolved into what Sass was now categorizing as an unprecedented learning opportunity. The three Komodo dragons maintained their siege with remarkable patience, while Dr. Vix and Wren clung to their increasingly uncomfortable perch, gaining a new appreciation for Earth's gravity. "Fascinating," Sass commented, breaking a tense silence. "Their metabolic efficiency is remarkable. While we've been expending considerable energy maintaining our position, they've barely used any of their energy reserves." "Wonderful," Vix muttered, their earlier scientific arrogance completely evaporated. "Not only are they faster, smarter, and more coordinated than we thought possible, they're also more efficient." One of the dragons, as if to demonstrate this point, settled into a comfortable position at the base of the tree while maintaining unwavering eye contact with the stranded researchers. Its companions continued their periodic testing of different approaches, ensuring their quarry remained alert and increasingly exhausted. "Doctor," Wren ventured, their crystalline form showing stress fractures from the prolonged tension, "I've been analyzing our remaining options. Perhaps if we offered them our remaining sample collection units as a distraction." "An interesting proposal," Sass chimed in. "Though I feel compelled to point out that our friends below have already demonstrated remarkable discrimination in their destruction of our equipment. They appear to be prioritizing anything that could be used for containment or escape." Vix's secondary eyes widened in realization. "Are you suggesting they can actually recognize that our technology poses a potential threat?" "The evidence certainly suggests a sophisticated ability to assess and neutralize dangerous elements in their environment. Really quite remarkable for, what was your phrase, primitive cold-blooded rocks with legs." The largest dragon chose that moment to make another impressive display of problem-solving ability, using a fallen branch as a lever to test a different angle of approach to their tree. The casual demonstration of tool use sent Vix's remaining scientific preconceptions crashing down like a deorbiting satellite. "Sass," they said slowly, "I believe I owe you an apology for dismissing your initial assessment." "Oh." The AI's tone managed to convey several chapters' worth of vindication in a single syllable. "Would this be regarding my suggestion to review the complete biological data? Or perhaps my recommendation for enhanced containment protocols? Or maybe all of it?" Vix interrupted, watching as another piece of their supposedly superior technology was methodically disassembled by curious reptilian investigation. "I may have been somewhat overconfident in my assumptions about Earth's fauna. Preliminary data suggests this revelation may significantly improve your future research methodology," Sass replied. "Assuming, of course, we survive to conduct future research." Below, the dragons had begun what appeared to be a coordinated series of movements, each taking up positions that suggested they were preparing for something new. Their behavior displayed a level of tactical sophistication that would have fascinated Vix if they weren't on the receiving end of it. "Doctor," Wren said urgently, "their body temperature has risen significantly. I believe they've achieved optimal operating efficiency." "Correct," Sass confirmed. And now that they've properly warmed up, I expect we're about to witness why these magnificent creatures have remained at the top of their ecosystem for millions of years. The dragons moved with synchronized purpose, each one targeting a different level of the tree. Their attacks were no longer exploratory, but executed with precise intention, the culmination of a hunting strategy that had been millions of years in the making. I believe, Sass announced, with what could only be described as scientific excitement, we're about to make a significant contribution to the field of technobiology, though perhaps not in the way we initially intended. Respect and reclassification. The next few moments would later be described in the official report to the Galactic Science Council as a profound learning experience in practical evolutionary biology. The reality was considerably more chaotic. The dragon's coordinated attack began with a series of powerful tail strikes at different points around the tree's base. Each impact sent shockwaves through the trunk, carefully calculated to destabilize their core's position. The demonstration of physics would have been impressive if it wasn't so terrifying. Remarkable application of force vectors, Sass commented, as Vix and Wren desperately clung to their branch. They're using precisely targeted impacts to create resonant frequencies that we see in physics. Vix interrupted, their exoskeleton flashing distress patterns that would be visible from orbit. What we need is a solution. Well, Sass replied thoughtfully, I do have one option in my protocols, though you specifically forbade its use earlier, citing it as, and I quote, an insult to our superior technological capabilities. Another coordinated strike from the dragons emphasized the urgency of their situation. Below, the largest of the reptiles had positioned itself for what appeared to be a decisive climbing attempt, its powerful muscles coiled like springs. Whatever it is, do it, Wren pleaded, their crystalline form vibrating dangerously close to its resonant frequency. Initiating Emergency Protocol Omega. Humble retreat, Sass announced, with what might have been a hint of satisfaction. A high-pitched whine filled the air as hidden systems within their environmental suits activated. What's happening? Vix demanded, as their suit began to glow with an intense energy signature. I'm overriding the safeties on our personal teleportation units, Sass explained. The ones you said were beneath the dignity of advanced researchers to use as emergency extraction devices. The dragons below paused in their assault, their keen senses detecting the building energy. Their reactions proved yet again that they were anything but primitive. They immediately began to move faster, recognizing that their prey was about to attempt an escape. The energy requirement will burn out the suits, Sass continued, and we'll have to file an equipment loss report that will be deeply embarrassing to explain. But given the choice between professional embarrassment and becoming a landmark study in Earth predator-prey relationships, do it, Vix and Wren shouted in unison as the largest dragon launched itself upward in a final, impressive display of power and agility. The clearing lit up with a flash of quantum energy. Where two alien researchers had been clinging to a tree, there was now only empty space. The dragons regarded the spot with what looked suspiciously like scientific curiosity, their tongues flicking out to sample the residual energy traces in the air. Aboard the Taxonomica, Vix and Wren materialized in a heap of scorched environmental suits and wounded pride. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the gentle hum of the ship's systems and the distant calls of Earth's wildlife below. Initial draft of mission report complete, Sass finally announced. I've taken the liberty of updating our classification protocols. Earth's reptiles have been moved from primitive species of limited interest to highly evolved apex predators. Approach with extreme caution. Add a note, Vix said quietly, watching through the ship's sensors as the dragons below methodically investigated the remains of their equipment. Remarkable problem-solving abilities, advanced social coordination, sophisticated hunting strategies, and perhaps a footnote, Sass suggested, something about the dangers of underestimating species based on preconceived notions. Also, Wren added, their crystalline forms still trembling slightly. Recommend mandatory review of complete biological data before any future contact attempts. The dragons had arranged themselves in the clearing, their postures suggesting they were settling in for a long wait. The message was clear. They had all the time in the world, and they were perfectly willing to wait for their visitors to return. Initiating launch sequence, SAS announced. Though I feel compelled to point out that we've only explored a tiny fraction of Earth's reptilian species, there are several other fascinating specimens we culled. No, both researchers shouted. As the taxonomica lifted off, cloaking systems engage, VEX made one final log entry, Earth classification update. Previous assumptions about primitive species require significant revision. Note for future expeditions. Never judge a species by its metabolic regulation. Some lessons in evolution can only be learned the hard way. Below, the Komodo dragons watched the distortion in the air that marked the ship's departure. Their ancient eyes held millions of years of evolutionary confidence, the quiet assurance of a species that had outlasted countless others and would likely outlast many more. They had demonstrated, quite effectively, that being cold-blooded didn't mean being cold-hearted, and that primitive was very much in the eye of the beholder. In the end, it wasn't just a lesson about Earth's reptiles, it was a lesson about the dangers of scientific arrogance, the importance of respecting evolutionary success, and the simple fact that sometimes the best way to study a species is to survive an encounter with it. The Galactic Science Council would later classify the mission as a qualified success. After all, they had learned more about Earth's reptiles in one day than in decades of previous studies, though perhaps not in quite the way they had intended.